Picture this. A company is selling something so amazing that the green credentials are off the charts. And you're so curious, you're so impressed that you write to the company and you ask them, how did you make this? You get someone from the company to respond and you eagerly read through their response. But it doesn't really make sense. I don't understand, you tell them, and you ask them to explain it again. Again, they send you another message, and you read through it, and again you say, I don't understand. You go back and forth and back and forth and back and forth until eventually your heart stops and your stomach tightens because you realize that this whole time you have been lied to. Not just that, but the company that has been lying to you has been willfully destroying the planet this entire time. I don't understand, you say now, not with curiosity, but with anger. Because what you do understand is that every customer, every regulator, every investor, even their own staff have been lied to. This is how one of the biggest corporate fraud cases in history was uncovered, the Dieselgate scandal. I am a criminal psychologist, and when I spoke with emissions regulator Alberto Ayala, he told me that this case, which hit headlines around the world, started with him in California just asking questions about Volkswagen's new, allegedly clean diesel cars. VW later pled guilty to installing a defeat device, which artificially lowered the emissions of the cars when they were in testing situations, which meant that when the cars hit the road, the nitrous oxides coming out of those tailpipes were 10 to 40 times the US legal limits. This matters because these emissions are so harmful to our lungs and ecosystems that they have been called a super pollutant. VW had to pay billions of dollars in fines and settlements. Employees even went to prison. And over the next decade, cars from around the world were tested, and defeat devices were found to be a global issue, an industry-wide problem. The question, of course, is why? Why did these clever, informed people decide to commit environmental crimes, intentionally destroying our air? And of course, how do we stop these kinds of crimes from happening in the future? When I went through the research on social science and started applying it to environmental crimes, one thing I realized very quickly was that when it comes to motives, it's almost never just greed. Going through thousands of environmental crimes, I noticed a pattern. I noticed a psychological profile. And the same factors were relevant whether or not the perpetrators were in corporations or organized crime groups, whether or not they were suits in boardrooms or wildlife crime traffickers, whether they were salesmen or hitmen. The same factors applied. And I call them the 6 pillars of environmental crime. They are ease, impunity, greed, rationalization, conformity, and desperation. Explained simply, in every crime I came across, there were people who said that they did it because it was easier to destroy the planet than not to. Many also thought or knew that they weren't going to get caught. Others told themselves that they could be doing something worse, or everyone else is doing it too. And some people felt like they had no other options. What startled me was that if you dismantle any one of these 6 psychological pillars, you can cause entire networks of organized environmental crime to crumble. Now, you might think that dealing with the criminals who are collectively destroying our resources, who are burning down our forests, that it might, bum me out a bit. But actually, I've never been more hopeful about Earth's future than after working in this area. Now, one of the reasons is that I have uncovered this profile which allows us to put a face on this destruction. These are real people with relatable motives, not just monsters. And that's important because monsters can't be defeated, but humans, we can stop. The other thing that's made me hopeful are the many people who are already working to catch environmental criminals and hold them accountable. I call them Earth's capable guardians. They include the undercover agents who infiltrate organized crime groups, the environmental lawyers who are fighting for the rights of environmental defenders, the scientists who are collecting data so that polluters can be held accountable, and of course, the regulators who are catching emissions criminals like in the Dieselgate case. It's important that we celebrate, understand, and fund all of their important work. But also, I think it's time to invite social scientists into the conversation about how to save nature. Because it's only when we understand how to change people's minds that we can turn laws into norms, we can turn policies into actions, and we can change the way that we relate to the Earth to prevent environmental crimes from happening in the first place. And in that way, we can all become Earth's capable guardians. Thank you.